coffee thingy.
Thanks.
You generate a lot of community conversation.
I figured that.
Oh, yeah. Activity, everything's different. It's crazier than it was before. We do. Okay, we'll first of all verify that we have a quorum. We do have a quorum. Yes, we do. I'll call the meeting to order. Now call the meeting of the Waco MPO Policy Board of January 19, 2023 to order at 2 o'clock. Staff, is this meeting been posted? Yes. Are there councils that should be called into session? It doesn't look like this evening, or judge, just we're good. All right, I'm going to welcome all the guests today. We provide an opportunity for the public to address the MPO Policy Board on any agenda item. Please complete a speaker's registration card with the MPO staff if you'd like to speak. Speakers will be allotted one presentation at the beginning of the agenda for each agenda item the speaker wishes to address. Please note that each action item will have a separate public hearing later in the agenda. Speakers have the option of addressing the board at either time. You'll be allowed one opportunity to address the board per agenda item. For items not on today's agenda, there's a separate hearing of visitors at the end of the meeting. MPO staff, do we have any registered speakers?
We do not.
No, we do not today. There are no registered speakers, so we will move to agenda item number 3 and consider approval of the minutes of the January 19, 2023 MPO Policy Board meeting. A copy of those minutes was provided in the meeting packet. Are there any corrections to the minutes as submitted?
None from the vice chair.
Hearing none from the vice chair or otherwise, the minutes are approved as presented. We've got a number of action items on today's meeting, really 4 action items. 3 of them are targets, got safety target, roadway safety target, transportation safety target, condition target on the FAST Act. So we got target practice tonight. And we'll be going over those one by one. I have to step out for a quick call, a business call unexpectedly, and Vice Chair and Mayor Pro Tem Bordery will be taking over the chair duties. But so with item number 4 on the agenda, consideration and action regarding approval of resolution 2023-3, Waco MPO Policy Board support of public transportation asset condition targets established by Waco Transit Inc. for calendar year 2023. The Waco metropolitan area includes the requirements identified as part of the FAST Act. Go ahead, Kesh.
Thank you. So the first item on the list is public transit asset condition. This is part of our comprehensive and continuous regional planning process, in which we frequently do performance measurement, which are also required by FAST Act. And part of the measurement is to set some targets, and these targets then we report on whether we achieve them or we fail to achieve them, and also how do we plan to incorporate them into our overall planning process. And so the first one is the transportation asset condition for public transportation. And this is the one which measures the regional transit vehicles and their facilities related to what the FTA sets out as the state of good repair. This is the one on which we reported at the last meeting. And so I will move to the transit to the targets we have. And in this particular case, you can see the 2022 targets that are listed in the column in the center, and the 2023 targets that are listed second from the right. And these are the ones where these targets are for the assets that we expect to exceed the useful I'm suddenly drawing blank on the ULB definition. Useful life benchmark. Thank you. So based on this, the most important part for our consideration is that our transit fleet conditions, they remain mostly in good condition. They are still safe. They are slightly older than they were before. And the overall facilities of the Waco transit system remain in good condition. We held public input process, in which public comment period that was conducted from January 30th to February 8th. And we had a public meeting on January 31st at 12 noon. It was recorded and posted for viewing, and we did not receive any formal comments. And so for today, the action item, move forward. Next. So one more. So for today, the technical advisory committee that had already considered the recommendation, and they supported that we adopt the public transportation asset condition. And so for today, we have a public hearing followed by discussions and the options that you are expected to take action on.
Okay, as Councilmember Holmes and Chairman Holmes, substitute teacher here for a few minutes, just bringing up, let's open the public hearing at 2:05 p.m. Do we have any registered speakers to address the board on this issue?
No.
We do not. Okay. Then let's go ahead and close the public hearing at 2:05 p.m. and ask for any questions or discussion from the board. All right. Hearing none, we can move on to consideration and action. Do we have a motion to approve as the recommendation?
I'm looking at the recommendations.
Motion made by Deidre Emerson, second made by Bo Thomas. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, carries unanimously. Let's move to consideration and action regarding approval of resolution 2023-4 Waco MPO Policy Board support of public transportation safety targets for calendar year 2023. Established by Waco Transit System, Inc. in accordance with the requirements identified as part of the Fixing America's Surface Transportation, the FAST Act. Dr. Kumar.
So this is another safety target, another target associated with Waco Transit that we consider the policy board each year. And this one has to do with safety. Typically, it has to do with mechanical failure rates and also any accidents that may have occurred on our roadway. This is also part of the FAST Act requirement, and we typically look at the safety metrics and the performance targets in a plan. We call it PTASP, and this is typically a document that is adopted by the owner of the transit, in this particular case, City of Waco. The City of Waco had considered the PTASP at its December meeting and had adopted the safety report. And based on that, the targets that are listed, the next slide, are here, and you can see that the baseline number of fatalities at 0, rate of fatalities obviously then at 0. Injury rate, we expect it to be lower to 2.6 versus 4.4, and the rates we expect to decline as well. Safety events of 2.2 versus 3.6 previously, and the rate of safety events also we expect to see a minor decline there. And system reliability is still at 33,980 vehicle miles before any mechanical failure is reported. Same thing about the demand response. So the first one, the section at the top is for the fixed route system, and the section at the bottom is for the demand response, typically your cutaways in smaller vehicles. And the numbers, again, we expect to see a slight decline across the board. Next one. And so the takeaway is that we at Waco Transit, we have very low number and the rate of transit-related fatality and serious injuries. And these numbers are already so low that it is really difficult to make any further improvement on that. The mechanical rate failure are typically often related to the age of the vehicle itself. And as the Waco Transit makes new purchases of the vehicle, we expect that those rates to get better as well. Next. Similar to the previous one, we had a public comment period that was from January 30th to February 8th, and we had our public meeting on January 31st. And for this also, no formal comments were received. The Technical Advisory Committee considered the resolution at its meeting and recommends the approval of the resolution. So today's action item again is a public hearing followed by discussion and then your decision.
All right, we will open the public hearing at 2:08 on this matter. Do we have any registered speakers to address the board at this time?
No.
All right, and it looks like just moved over to 2:09 is when we will close the public hearing. And any questions or discussion from the board? All right, hearing none. Do we have a motion to approve this recommendation?
Move approval.
Move approval.
Recommendation.
And Jacob Bell second. All right, got it down. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, passes unanimously. And we will move on to consideration and action regarding approval of resolution 2023-5 Waco MPO Policy Board support of roadway safety targets for calendar year 2023 established by the Texas Department of Transportation in accordance with requirements identified as part of the FAST Act. Dr. Moore.
Can you move forward? So third item that is for consideration related to targets for this year, and we typically do this every month, every year in February. And so each February, these are the three targets that we bring to your discussion for your consideration. The third one today is the fatality and accident rates on our Texas roadways. This is part of the Vision Zero initiative that TXDot had taken up. Previously, the expectation is by 2050, we expect to have zero fatality on Texas roads. The numbers are obviously quite alarming. The year 2021 was especially deadly. And 2022, we saw some improvement across the state. Although for McLennan County, and we'll explain it in just a minute, for McLennan County, the numbers actually got a little worse even for 2022. So we are, so the measurements that we typically look at are the number of fatalities and also fatalities per 100 million untraveled, and also number of serious injuries and similar rate for that, and also the number of non-motorized fatality and non-motorized serious injuries typically relate to pedestrian and bike crashes. So for 2023, next slide. The TXDot targets that TXDot sets for itself and sends it out to every MPO for their consideration. So for 2023, we're expecting 3,159 fatalities for a rate of 1.20. And number of serious injuries at 17.819 and serious injury rate of 6.77. And the non-motorized fatality and serious injury is 2.34. These are slight improvements from previous year with the expectation that the trend will go down to zero in most of those categories by 2050. Associated with that, next slide, is the number for McLennan County. And as you can see, the number of fatalities went from 38 to 42 for 2022. And we expect accordingly, we are setting the 2023 target at 41 with the rate of fatality of 1.34, number of serious injuries at 214, and the serious injury rate at 7.12. And the 32 is our total number of non-motorized bike and pedestrian related fatality and serious injuries. We typically, as part of this adoption of the target, we do this not only based on the 7-year target, but also based on 5-year numbers, which are at the bottom row. So one of the items that is important for the policy board to consider is that what will it actually take in terms of actions so that we can support the TXDot's target of Vision Zero, of reaching zero fatality by 2050. So some of the examples that we wanted to bring to our consideration are setting the regional vision and value, and part of that is also the MTP process that we will talk briefly about today toward the end of the meeting, and also our project selection criteria typically ought to reflect some of the safety considerations, and at the same time, travel time, modal choices, these are all part of the consideration with the expectation that we make our roadways as safe as possible. One of the very important discussions based on MPO oriented action item is that we received a grant for comprehensive safety action plan. We'll talk a little bit more about it at the end of it, but at the same time, TXDot also has allocated about $50,000 for each MPO to develop its own MPO safety action plan. And that is expected to get completed, in fact, prior to the comprehensive safety action plan. And so we're excited about both of them. But most importantly, we consider safety in all of our project selection criteria, as well as we move forward with some of the grant writing process. Safety typically figures as one of the more important considerations. Next. So the takeaways for this is that we think that TXDot's targets are realistic for Waco region for 2023, and next year we will be doing far more better evaluations for the 2024 targets based on the comprehensive grant that we have, and also the TXDot Safety Task Force is actively working to see how can we improve our safety-related considerations. So we have the public input for these targets as well for the same period of January 30th to February 8th, with public meeting at January 31st. And for this also, no formal comments were received. Technical Advisory Committee considered the resolution at its last meeting and recommends approval of the resolution. So for today, it's again public hearing followed by discussions and your action.
All right. We will open the public hearing here at 2:14 p.m. Do we have any registered speakers who are here? None? Okay, we will then also close the public hearing at 2:14. Any questions or discussions from the board on this matter? All right, hearing none, do we have a motion on the recommendation to approve the resolution from the board?
I'll make that motion.
All right, Keith Evans made the motion.
Second.
Second from Will Jones. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye. All opposed? All right, carries unanimously. Motion passes. Move on to agenda item 7, consideration and action regarding approval of resolution 2023-6 Waco MPO Policy Board support for project applications from within McLennan County for the 2023 Transportation Alternatives Call for Projects administered by the Texas Department of Transportation. Dr. Kwon.
Thank you. Yes. So we are really excited about the 5 projects that are being submitted for the transportation alternative projects. All of them are addressing different challenges and also make improvement in very different ways. These are, in fact, all of the 5 projects that we'll bring to attention today are all model projects that can be replicated across different parts of the county. This opened on December 2nd, January 27th was the deadline for submitting the preliminary application. The preliminary application are only considered for eligibility. So there is no decision that gets made at this stage. So there is a second stage at which more detailed applications are expected. And we expect that to occur sometime around June, I believe. Because March 27th is the deadline for all the applicants to hear whether their projects are declared eligible or not. And so June is what we're expecting the detailed application deadlines to be. This is the project timeline as we progress through this, but I really want to jump directly into the 5 projects that we are going to be that have been submitted. So go to the next. The first one is the Cottonwood Trail. The city of McGregor is proposing that, and this is an extension of the Cottonwood Trail that connects McGregor all the way to Waco downtown. And the second one is the Carbon Neighborhood Bike and Pedestrian Movement. Pedestrian improvement, that's across Dallas Street. And then we also have downtown Waco ADA safety improvement across Austin Avenue and the downtown Waco neighborhood bike and pedestrian improvement of 11th Street and Woodway Elementary safety improvements on the States Drive and the Harvey Drive on the 2 sides. Typically for all the transportation alternative projects, the MPO supports all of them, but I want to talk a little more about each of the projects. So the first one here in front of us is the McGregor branch of the Cotton Belt Trail. And this is a 4-mile shared use path. And this is part of the railroad bed that the city of McGregor has already acquired. And this would be a major improvement in the current, and not only connects the existing shared use path, but actually offers a much longer shared use path that has been part of our active transportation plan for the last 5 years. We're really excited about this. The preliminary cost estimate is $1.5 million on this project. The next one is the Carbon Neighborhood Bike and Ped Improvement. This one will, this proposal from City of Waco includes tree canopy, signage, pedestrian level lighting, and seating. And these are all, this is more of a neighborhood style project, and neighborhood improvement is the most important objective of this. And $3.25 million is the expected project cost for this. The next one is the Downtown Waco ADA Safety Improvement. This is part of the implementation of the Downtown Implementation Program that City of Waco had taken. And this again is to make the downtown a little more livable, even more human scale and such. And in this case also, it's the emphasis is a little more on the pedestrian movement and also making sure that the urban space, the quality of urban space itself improves significantly. Preliminary cost estimate on this one is $1.5 million. And the next one is the one across 11th Street that connects Washington Avenue to I-35. Again, a major path in which we are again considering all forms of signage, pedestrian crossing, as well as tree canopy and such. And so this, so part of the downtown implementation plan was to create a circulation system whereby people and on foot traffic as well as bike could actually move around in a safer and more desirable space. The preliminary cost estimate is $2.9 million. This is the one really around Woodway Elementary School, and if I'm not mistaken, this is one of the schools which gets quite a bit of. You have to move to the next one. Yes, this is the one that moves, that has significant number of children walking back and forth from school, so they're not getting dropped off. And so pedestrian improvement, it fits quite nicely here. And in this particular case, the project is about improving both pedestrian traffic as well as easing the vehicular traffic, which typically gets quite worse in the morning and in the afternoon when children are picked up. This is on two sides of the Woodway Elementary School, and the preliminary cost estimate for this one is $715,000. One of the things that I did want to mention is we received notification that next slide. So we received notification that there are 1.7, the total amount of projects that have been submitted to TXDot amounts to about $1.7 billion. And the total amount of money that they have allocated is between 275 and $300 million. And what that means is that there really are many projects which are not going to get selected in this particular case. I think that we have some really solid case for all 5 of the projects that have been submitted. All 5 of them represent some very immediate need and are all very high impact projects. However, as we move forward in this process, the important part about these projects is that we can also start and continue to explore other funding opportunities as well. But at this point in time, I can't tell you how excited I am about all 5 projects that we have submitted for this year.
And so we're not picking and choosing from among these 5 today. Ours is essentially a resolution of support for these 5 projects. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
Let's open the public hearing at 2:22. Do we have any registered speakers?
We have one.
This one.
Okay.
Do you want now?
For this item, if it is related to this item, now is good. Yes.
Now is good?
Yeah.
Okay. The bike and pedestrian working group strongly supports all 5 of these.
Oh, great. Glad to hear it. Any other registered speakers? Okay. Let's go ahead and close the public hearing also at 2:22. And board questions, discussion? All right. Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the resolution based on the recommendation?
I'll move.
All right.
Second.
Motion by Judge Felton, second by Jones. Any discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, carries unanimously. Yeah.
I just want to, so with this action, what you're doing is authorizing me to write the letter of support for all 5 applications as they begin the next detailed portion of the application process.
Are we now moving on to review, discussion, and action regarding East Loop 340 lane widening project?
Yes.
All right, and we've got staff presentation introduction from Dr. Cole, followed by Victor from TXDot.
So this particular project of Loop 340 is part of our MTP. It is not in TIP at the moment. And this is, as you can see from this discussion here, that originally it is listed as the 2-lane principal arterial with shoulders. That's the current condition. And the scope of work was to widen to 4 lanes divided. The total amount allocated at that point in time, based on its estimate, was $26 million. And since then, TXDot has been thinking through this project based on the UTP allocation, as well as thinking through this design and resolution, design and engineering portion of it. And so today they are bringing to you three different options to consider and have discussion. And so that, and after that, at the end of this presentation, we're expecting you to give us the directive action to pursue one of the options. So with that, I'll hand it over to Victor.
Good afternoon, everybody. So we're here to talk about the 340 widening. 340 widening. This is the northeast side of Waco. The limits are from the Brazos River to US 84. This is the last section of Loop 340 that is only a 2-lane section. And we have been proposing to improve this to a 4-lane divided section with frontage roads and main lanes. That's the point we're at now with our schematic. We've got an environmental clearance. We have a plan. Ron Aldrich here is with IAA. He's our design consultant that's about to start the actual design plan process. But a little bit of history on this before we go forward. What Mukesh was talking about was programming the UTP was more or less a bare bones project. That is, we were going to keep the existing 2 lanes in place, convert those to 2 lanes, 1 way, 1 south. We were going to scab on and just build an extra 2 lanes off to the side going north. So that would give us a 4-lane divided highway, which was supposed to be a relief, a blow-off valve for when we put I-35 under construction. But I-35 got funded before we had a chance to build the Band-Aid project. So now we're kind of at the fork in the road to figure out, is that really the best project to build? And that's kind of what I'm going to turn it over to Brian, and he's going to go through the technical aspects and kind of give some options on other projects we could build versus just the Band-Aid project that's programmed in UTP currently. So,
so if you go to the next slide, what I'll kind of run through is first with some of the existing conditions. Then I'll run through kind of what the ultimate facility is going to look like, and then the 2 build alternatives that we've been evaluating. So just going through a few sections here, the existing 340 is, as y'all know, is going to be 1 lane each direction, 2-lane roadway. Next slide. And then as you get closer to 84, you end up with a 5-lane section with a 2-way left turn lane in the middle. So the 3 different alternatives we're going to go through, we're calling them ultimate, interim option A, interim option B. So the first thing we'll do is go through that ultimate build out with an estimated construction cost of $153 million. And what this is a 4-lane divided section with frontage roads and ramps for the entire length of the project. Next slide. And then once you get a little closer to 84, that division goes away and becomes a barrier separated facility. And then this is just a section kind of showing with the bridges. There are going to be several structures, including over State Highway 6. Just showing what those look like. We've got 12-foot lanes, 10-foot shoulders on the bridge, and then 4-foot shoulders to the median on the inside. So starting, we're going left to right. Left is south, right is to the north. So we are just south of the Brazos River, which is just off the page over here. Yellow in this schematic is main lane construction, green is frontage road construction, and then red is for structures. So we start on the south end of the Brazos, and the biggest thing down here is continuing the frontage road work over the Brazos River. So we're reconstructing 3 of the bridges. The recent construction over the Brazos, the recent bridge that was put in a few years ago would remain in place, but we would be replacing the current northbound bridge and putting in 2 frontage road bridges. For the most part, as we continue to move forward, I'll just kind of hit on some of the highlights, but for the most part, it is a normal main lane frontage road ramping facility. So move to the next slide. So over State Highway 6, and then the UP Railroad, replacing the bridges over the railroad. And then it is a large structure going over State Highway 6. We have the 340 frontage roads on the bottom. Then the next level up is the State Highway 6 main lanes. And then above that would be the 340 main lanes. Continuing on, just redoing our typical section through here with culverts. Continuing on, next slide. We do have to upgrade several of the culverts. So there are some pretty large drainage structures in that area. Next slide. 2491, for the most part, from here down south to State Highway 6, we have sidewalks on either side. On the northbound side, here is where we begin a shared use path that will be on the northbound lanes, beginning at 2491. Elkspur Road, which currently connects over to 340, would be turned into a cul-de-sac. And all the traffic would be optimized within the 2491 Loop 340 intersection. Continuing to the north. Shared use path continues on the northbound lanes. Or on the northbound side. Next slide. Normal ramping section. Next slide. Orchard Lane would be upgraded to handle a lot of the school traffic that's in that area. So there, we've done several pedestrian upgrades at that intersection to make it a little bit more friendly for pedestrians and vehicles. Continuing on to the north, next slide. We get to Williams Drive. When we started this project years ago, originally, this was going to be an at grade, and so there would not be connection across Williams. However, we have gone through the process and put in as part of our environmental process, put in a grade separation at Williams, which and also increased the safety aspects of the vehicles and pedestrians at that intersection. Continue to the north, and then we tie into the existing 340 section just south of US 84. Next slide. So that was what we've looked at as the ultimate. Now we're going to look at interim option A. The proposed construction cost right now for that is 47 or 46, a little over 46 million. Next slide. And what this is essentially building the intersections and frontage roads from State Highway 6 all the way up to 84. What this will allow is for in the future, if funding becomes available to put in main lanes, they would just be able to be put right in the middle. There would not be any reconstruction. This alternative would also put in all the ultimate drainage structures as well. So it begins at State Highway 6. So the road you see here on the left is State Highway 6, and then it continues to the north. And all of the, like I said, all of the frontage road intersection, all the green you saw previously, that is the exact same design here, just minus the main lanes and minus the ramps. Continuing to the north. So we can go through this pretty quick, I think. It is putting in the shared use path, all the pedestrian elements and those safety upgrades. Those would all be in this alternative. Continuing to the north. Continuing on. So all of this, all the improvements we talked about at Orchard, that is all in here as well. North. The one that go forward one. Sorry, where are we at? Sorry, go forward one. Right here, yeah. The one difference is here is that we do have to put in a transition from the existing section where we've got the main lanes of existing 340. There is a transition pavement that is needed to get it to those frontage roads. But other than that, that's the only pavement that would be, you know, kind of an interim basis. In the future, it would just be on. Interim option B is what.
Hang on just a second, I've got a question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
On that, number 2 interim, are there turning lanes at all those intersections?
Yes, sir.
Like 2491 Orchard Lane?
Well, based on our traffic analysis and the recommendations from our traffic group, based on projections out for accounting for growth, we have put in the turning lanes that are necessary to make the intersections operate efficiently.
Currently at Loop 3, at Orchard Lane, there's a signal light there.
Yes, sir.
Could that stay or?
It would be altered. There would still be a signal there, yes.
Okay,
It is proposed to be a signalized intersection, but rather than the existing configuration, it would be the frontage roads and there would be a signal at each of those,
okay,
both northbound and southbound frontage roads.
okay, thank you.
Question, what would, on the frontage road option only, what would your design speed be on the frontage road? Or really, what would the speed limit be if you diverted traffic there for years?
The design speed on the front roads, I believe, is 40 miles an hour. It was on one of the early slides. It's 40, I believe it's 40 miles an hour.
So that would be a reduction in what this current speed is, basically from Highway 6 to, I think it's about Orchard, is where it's 50, 55, something like that right now.
Yeah, 55.
Interim option B is the alternative that Victor alluded to, that was kind of the Band-Aid project. So this was kind of the original project, but I'll get into, there are some issues with it, but it is the cheapest option, being a cost estimate of 20 million. Next slide. So the difference here is that in the alternative A that we had, the southbound frontage road was being built, and the northbound frontage road was also being built in their ultimate configuration. In this alternative, the ultimate frontage road pavement for the northbound side is being built. However, it is also being temporarily widened so that it's a rural section. So we wouldn't be putting in the curb and gutter. The pavement could be converted to that in the future. And then the existing lanes that are out there now, that would be used for southbound traffic. This does present some issues with drainage we would be constructing some temporary drainage structures. There would also be some temporary pavement in this alternative that would have to come out when the frontage roads are constructed. So it does present a little bit of a constructability issue, and there is a little bit more interim pavement that would need removed in the future. Next slide. So as you can see, the southbound or the existing pavement stays in place for the southbound lanes, and the ultimate frontage road, that pavement would stay in place. And that's taking that northbound traffic. Next slide. The other thing, this alternative also does not have some of the upgrades at the intersections. So there's an interim intersection design that would accommodate, some of the existing traffic, but it would not be intended for projected traffic volumes out for the life of our analysis. Elk Road, the one thing we did with this alternative though is try to provide the ultimate access. And what I mean by that is at Elk Spur and locations like that where access is cut off in the future, we went ahead and accommodated that in this alternative, because otherwise it would have resulted in even more temporary pavement, essentially. Continuing on. Continuing. Orchard right there. So it's on that left-hand side right there. So Orchard would be very similar to what it is today, just traffic would come across to get onto those northbound lanes. This alternative does tie into the 4-lane section. So Williams is kind of over here to the right, a little bit further to the north. The existing 4-lane section ends a little south of that. And so this would all be temporary pavement tying into that 4-lane section. But this is the alternative that would get 4 lanes from 84 all the way down to State Highway 6. And that's the technical. Any questions on? Sorry.
Yes, sir. It originally, discussion was that this would be a relief during I-35, but it didn't happen because of timing and those kind of things. So if go forward plan is 12th Street South on I-35 construction, what would be the timing to get any of this done before that started? So it could still be a relief.
I have to turn that over.
That's a loaded question, Justin. So it all depends, especially on funding and how funding falls out. Like I was here for y'all a year ago talking about funding for I-35. And that's still kind of up in the air. It's looking good, but we won't know for sure until probably another month or two. They settle the UTP and they assign funding and rank all the projects.
So how quick does this decision need to be made? Anyway, do you know?
Well, this decision, we're into a fork in the road. He's got to go one way or the other on his design. He's on the clock and we've got to get plans out. So the recommendation that I made at the TAC meeting was that the MPO pursue option A. You get your ultimate frontage roads, you get your bike and pedestrian elements, you get all your storm drain. When you do come back with the main lanes, traffic is not impacted because you're building down the middle. But at the same time, in the environment that we're in, and we're in the UTP cycle right now, what I'm gonna do is, if the MPO can fund option A, 46 million, I'm gonna request the remaining 100 million, 110 million to be funded through other funds during this UTP cycle. So if it does fall from the sky, we could get the whole project, the ultimate project is what we're gonna shoot for. And again, going back to timing, there may be a chance that they are both under construction at the same time. But at the same time, we do, since we have I-35 built out from 340 back to 12th Street, we have 77 that cuts in that can relieve some of that traffic and get the traffic back on to I-35 versus forcing them up around Northeast Loop. So it's a good time to be in. It's a lot of activity, but at the same time, it's something that needs to be done. So
I support that, but if at least nothing less than the second option. Because that makes it a lot safer in those people turning in and out of there. It's pretty treacherous right now. And I want to tell you, the traffic coming from north to south, coming down off that hill, they can't slow down to 55 time they get to the bottom of that hill. So someone taking a left on 2491 Rail Road is pretty nervous about that. So speaking from experience.
So something else to keep in mind too, option A is higher cost than option B, but in the long run, it will be cheaper if you do this now versus.
I mean, option A can pretty much be viewed as a phase one to the ultimate.
Exactly, right.
So it's not, you're not throwing away.
Right, and if we have Brian here start designing option A, and then, 6 months from now, we do find out that we have funding for the whole thing, it's easy to, he's already got half of it done, so.
Yeah.
Remind me what the funding sources are to fund option
It's just option A.
Waco.
A? That's what I'm asking.
Option A would be category 2 funds. And then we would try to pick up the remainder with other funding sources.
So that's a question I had in category 2 funding. What is that looking like these days? Do we have any updates on that, Mukesh, or like, are we spoken more for the next 8 years, or are we?
So, well, we're in a slightly different financial environment than we were in 2 years ago. And what I would expect is that some of the decisions that are going to be made right now are going to be looking at. So we do have the the preliminary draft UTP that's being considered for the next, is it 8 years total? How many years? It's roughly about 10 years.
10 years, UTP is 10 years, yes.
Yeah, about 10 years projected. But it's hard to simply make the judgment that it's going to stay at that level. And so we really have to look at the financial environment where we're in right now. And based on that, what we're thinking is at the MPO level that it probably makes sense not only from the project point of view, but even financially, it is very much possible that we can work with option A. That's a far better option for us to work with. And that obviously then leaves open the possibility of doing the ultimate. Option B does not seem to be preferable under any circumstances, whether we project it out for 10 years or even looking at the very short term.
So using CAP 2 funding for option A, what kind of bid schedule are we looking at?
As far as what year to let it in, is that what you're asking? I mean, they're one. The earliest we could probably let this 2 years, 3.5 from now.
I think we were looking at December of 25. Under 2 years.
That would be the earliest if we could get it into the cycle.
But the CAP 2 funding work with that? That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yes.
And keep in mind too, there's already 26 million of CAP 2 allocated to this project, so it would just be an additional 20.
Okay.
And we have at least that. We have at least that in the projected.
And so, so for the policy board, one of the items that we need to consider is that at any time the project cost changes by 10% or scope changes significantly, it triggers an amendment, and we are required to do an amendment to both MTP as well as TIP. And so based on that timeline, what we would be expecting will bring this back. Based on your directive action today, we'll bring this back up to your consideration in June to ask for your directive action at that time to pursue the amendment or not.
We don't have a public hearing on this. This is just a directive action to MPO staff. Is that correct?
Yes,
As to which option, and the TAC has recommended option A.
yes.
Any other questions or discussion on this? Do we need a motion, or do you want to mind it?
Yes, no,
What?
yes and no on option A.
Okay, do we have, let's do an all in favor of option A with a hand raised. All opposed, or I'm sorry, all in favor of option B with a hand raised. All right, is that the action you
Yes.
need? Okay.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you all, appreciate it. And then next we move to item number 9, update and discussion regarding rebuilding American infrastructure and sustainability and equity. The raised grant notice of funding opportunity. Dr.
So most of you already have this on your radar that our next MTP for 2050 will be, we have started the process, and we're going through this year and the next year to complete it, to bring to your decision or your to the board in January of 2025. So this is going to be a 2-year-long process. Within those 2 years, based on some of the preliminary discussions we have had, and how the new technology related to connected automated vehicle, electric charging stations, and the uses of mobility as a service or the shared mobility platform, these are all being discussed. And so we felt that it was important for us to pursue some planning projects so that we can figure out what is the most prudent way of incorporating technology in our transportation planning process. And so most of you probably are already familiar with RAISE grant. If you're not, this is a newer version of what you have come to know as TIGER grant or GOLD grant. And this is called Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity. And typically these have been previously allocated or designated for large-scale implementation projects. What we have for this year, interestingly enough, at the beginning itself, they had allocated about $75 million in planning budget. And we thought that we could not only pass on this opportunity, but this is an opportunity which also prepares us very well in a way, if we get funded for the next MTP cycle on the issue of how do we adopt and incorporate technology in our decision-making process. So the due date for this application is very fast, quickly coming up February 28th. The awards will be made by June 28th. And what we are considering is taking on a systems approach to adoption of technology in our transportation system. And let me walk you through what we're thinking about in terms of economic development, housing, land use, zero emissions, safety, resilience, and disaster as well. And so what we are considering the area, this map may be a little difficult to see, but most of you are familiar with Taylor Street, where it turns into Clifton in East Waco and coming straight through Franklin Avenue, and then Franklin Avenue goes underneath Valley Mills, becomes Spur 298, and then once it's past Highway 6, it becomes US 84. So we're considering between 8 to 9 mile corridor, with the idea that this is not just one corridor project that we want to plan for. We actually want a scalable project, which then allows us to incorporate similar kinds of project for the entire region rather than just one particular network. And the reason why this is important for us is to start, so in our transition from thinking about transportation as a line, we need to be really thinking about transportation and mobility space, whereby people tend to use all different kinds of mode of transportation in the same day. And typically it's not one singular mode from which people keep switching to something else. And so in that transition, what we wanted to do was make a proposal to plan, design, and engineer a scalable project that allows us replicability across the entire space. So that it's not a single project that we are thinking about. We are actually trying to figure out a prototype, develop a prototype, which then we can implement across the board. So for instance, the important part of this is, so even for the 340 discussion that we just had, part of adoption of some of this technology into that project has to be something that we need to be thinking very consciously about. So this is what this project allows us to do. If we are funded, that's what we're going to explore. We are typically, we're going to look at 3 different kinds of systems of smart technology. One has to do with urban typology that looks at lower speed, higher density, plenty of mixed use development. And the next one is the suburban exurban, that's the US 84 between Ritchie Road and Highway 6. And that's what we're calling the suburban exurban typology, where we typically have higher speed, lots of big box retail stores, low density, and also has lots of freight consideration to it. And then the transition zone, because that's typically what most of the technology adopters fail to see, how something transitions from urban to a suburban or exurban. So from the transition from a very slow speed to much higher speed requires different ways of incorporating technology. So we want to consider all of that as part of a single system so that we can figure out how do we incorporate affordable housing, economic development, safety, equity, all of these concerns into the same platform. So that's what this planning proposal is, that's our approach. And the last thing I wanted to mention about this is that typically a lot of times these kinds of projects happen at one time. And then after that, there is nothing, there's no system so that it can be continually improved. So for us, what that it might look something like this. So when we think of fatality or crash rates, we typically have a hotspot map. That's what we do. But we have no way of figuring out that an accident is exactly going to happen at this location. And so a much better technical tool that we have is to actually measure near misses. And what near misses does is that it allows us to then proactively figure out which locations are in fact more prone to accidents, and thereby we can put the interventions in place. And so that's the way of thinking about it, on a continual basis rather than a single project. And so that's what we're thinking. That's what we're writing the proposal for. And we wanted to bring to your attention that we'll submit it by 20th of February. And if you have any comment, by all means, not necessarily today, drop us an email or any comment. We'll be happy to incorporate, discuss, and think through with you.
So no action item on that, you're just working on it.
Yes.
Any questions for Doctor on this issue? Great. We'll proceed to that. Like I say, if you have any comments, just email or text. Next item is number 10, update and discussion from the TAC, Technical Advisory Committee, Zen.
Well, I've already kind of covered the TXDot thing. I was just going to tell you that we voted to go with option A, which I'm glad Judge with that too, on the same page there. But, that's about anything else that wanted to cover. Okay, thank you.
Any questions for Zen? Thanks for the report from TAC. Next item, number 11, discussion updates from TXDot regarding significant highway construction within the Waco metropolitan area. This is the Clayton report. So, fantastic.
Starting with Waco Drive, the bulk of this project we've got is to flip power from old signals to new at the intersections. Right now, Encore is out actively working to help get those services set up. We expect that work to really pick up late this month into March. Right now, we're looking at probably a April, May completion date if all goes to schedule with that work. But again, hopefully in the next 4 to 6 weeks, you start to see some new signals activated on that roadway. State highway.
Real quick, when the new signals are activated, will the old ones be taken down? Or
We'll pull them down. You'll notice right now a lot of the curb ramps and stuff are not in place in the corners. Once the old poles are removed and foundations are broken down below grade, you'll see the new curb ramps and that little bit of sidewalk.
So the lights will probably go up first and those corners will be down.
Correct.
Take out the old one.
Correct. State Highway 31 overpass at 939. Bulk of the work continues to be on the new main lane bridges, along with the widening down 939. Looking at a completion date of this fall still for that project. Our Spring Valley widening, again, this is between Sun Valley and Hewitt Drive. Traffic has been shifted to temporary pavement between Sun Valley and Old Temple, currently working on permanent pavement in that area. We're actually going to make a similar traffic switch from Old Temple down to Hewitt Drive tomorrow is the plan there. So traffic will move to that temporary pavement. Start working on the permanent pavement and permanent drainage on the east half of the roadway in that roadway. We're still on pace for the fall of 24 completion on the project. State Highway 6, and it'll actually be easier if you go to the next slide. We've got some visuals this month. Here's an overhead shot at the Bagby intersection. On the left-hand side of the page, this U-turn has been open to traffic. Right-hand side, this is the west.
The small.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Multi-ball. So yeah, top left corner is the CEFCO, top right corner is the Central Texas Marketplace. There's one of these U-turns open, the other. We're waiting on a barrier crew to come in. That will likely be in March to get the permanent rail put in place. There's a little bit of tie-in work to do, and then hopefully get that U-turn opened up to traffic. Next slide, moving to the west. On the bottom of the page, that's the eastbound frontage road. So from 84 headed towards the interstate. That frontage road has actually been open to traffic within the last 3 or 4 weeks. Traffic will stay that way for roughly a month, and then we'll actually move the eastbound main lanes over to that frontage road bridge to start on the permanent main lane work. On the top of the page, we're actually looking to make a similar traffic shift on Saturday. That will open up the new westbound bridge over the railroad tracks at Beverly. When that happens, the exit to industrial will close, so all frontage road traffic will need to take the Beverly exit to access Imperial and Industrial.
On that intersection, once it's all complete, will those kind of loop unders still be there?
Yes, you'll have the U-turns will be restored. The reason they're closed now will stay closed is once we get traffic moved out to these frontage road bridges, both of these existing structures will be removed and we'll build 2 permanent structures in their place. As beams and deck work is completed, these U-turns will be restored. This is at the industrial area. So again, this frontage road will be open to traffic. This is the exit I was referring to that will close on the right-hand side of the screen. And then roughly in this area where you can see the newer pavement in place, that's where the on-ramp will be to get back to the main lanes. This is the U-turn closest to 84. On the right-hand side of the page, this permanent U-turn has actually been open to traffic since this photo was taken. The last remaining bent structures for each of the frontage roads is currently under construction. We should be setting beams sometime in March for those 2 frontage road bridges. Get them open to traffic probably late summer of this year. All right, I-35 4B. Last month there was a request to kind of look at some before and after photos. So if you'll go to the next slide. What we've got here is the 11th and 12th Street intersection back in March of 19. So again, 11th, 12th Street used to cross over the interstate, main lanes underneath. And here's a shot of what it looks like today. Main lanes up and over. Since this photo was taken, signals are actually powered up, operating in flash. The east side of the intersection is currently open to traffic, so the top of the page. On the west side, there's some work ongoing for the 11th and Dutton project. There's some utility work ongoing there. Roughly a 3 to 4 week time frame, and we can go get the full intersection open up to the west side. 4th and 5th, so an intersection that looks drastically different today. If you go to the next slide, you can see where 5th Street used to kind of curl around to the north. That's been realigned. The last remaining work at this intersection is kind of on the bottom right-hand side of the page at 5th Street. We've completed the pavement, working on the drainage leave outs, sidewalk, and that should be wrapped up in the early part of March and get that part of the intersection fully opened up. So University Parks in March of 19. We'll go to the next slide, and here's what it looks like today. Again, this intersection is fully up and operational. Brazos River bridges, and you can see the previously built frontage road bridges. If you go to the next slide. Here's a shot of it today with the new main lane bridges there in the middle. MLK. So again, we've added the U-turns to this intersection. The east-west portions of this roadway remained as they were prior to the project. And then again, you can see the completed main lanes. Next slide. Business 77. This is another one that looks a little bit different today. It's kind of a spaghetti bowl mess prior to us starting. And here it is today. So again, greatly simplified, just a standard overpass here. Again, signals are up and running, intersections fully open to traffic. 84 intersection. And then here you are today. Again, intersection is complete, signals are up and running and fully operational. Barron Circle. So again, here's your fully completed intersection, main lanes over the top. And again, this intersection for the most part is done with some cleanup work. Loop 340. So the bulk of the work is on the frontage roads and U-turns, you'll see in the next slide. And then the addition of the ramps to either direction. There's some cleanup work to do in the island still, getting some of the illumination finished up here, but the bulk of the roadway work is complete. Questions?
Great report, Clayton. Any questions for Clayton? I'll just say it's remarkable. I mean, some of those before and afters are just.
4th and 5th and 77.
Yeah, the spaghetti one you talked about, it's just, I mean, and you know, that we've improved the condition there, we made it a lot safer, more drivable, cleaner. It's just the whole streamlining of the entire project. Coming to fruition like this is great. Thanks for the presentation.
On the northeast side of the river, under the interstate, you have a sense of when the pedestrian corridor is going to be open.
So still working on wrapping up some of the retaining wall work there. From talking with Weber, it looks like that'll wrap up the end of February. So in March, you should see a lot of the cleanup ongoing underneath the sidewalk side back in from Buzzard Billy's for the statement.
Perfect. New name, new restaurant.
Oh yeah, that's right. It's not Buzzard Billy's anymore.
All right, thanks, Clay. Appreciate it. We will move on to item 12, work group updates. We have one from Mike Pitt.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we had our meeting yesterday and most of the time was a presentation from Robert Benz of the Texas A&M Transportation Institute. And he was filling us in on traffic counting equipment and operation, specifically with regard to bicycle and pedestrian traffic. So that was the bulk of our meeting yesterday.
Great, thanks for the update. Anybody have any questions? We appreciate that. Moving on to item number 13, the MPO monthly report. Dr. Kumar.
Before I get to this, we are still open for nominations, recommendations for connected automated vehicle work group. We'll convene them back again in April, and they're going to be a major factor in how our MTP planning process begins. There are three very important updates that I wanted to discuss with you today. Number one is that we are very excited that we have received the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan grant for the full amount that we requested. And at this point in time, we will begin with the process of doing all the paperwork with the Federal Highway Administration. The entire process will probably take roughly about 4 to 5 months, after which we'll begin the process of the planning process. There are a few important things that to keep in mind. One is that we will be creating a safety action steering committee, And a lot of you here in this room are probably going to be serving on that. And so when you see an email from me making a request to volunteer to serve on that steering committee, please do not, please clear up your calendar. I know everyone here is extremely busy, but that is really important. The kind of safety report we have from McLean County is not something that we should ignore. It's actually a pretty serious item that we need to be paying attention to. The second part related to that is, and so first, again, thank you for creating that local fund. And we will use this year almost all of the local fund as the match for this particular grant. Not all of it, because we are expecting $140,000 to be the local match, of which our estimate is that about half of it is going to be in kind. The remaining half will be in cash. So we have already set up the process for how would we be managing the local fund. And so you will be seeing a letter from me. I will, if the letter does not directly go to you, you will be copied on it. And so we are hoping that you will jog everyone else's memory and also take prompt action on that. The last item that is also very important is that based on your directive action, we have created the entire process for the call for proposal, the project evaluations and such for the carbon reduction program. And so we are, again, last meeting, we discussed the timeline on when and how we are going to do this. And so we are happy to report that we have been able to manage how would we do the intake of the application online and how the TAC is going to handle the initial evaluation process, in which we will have the input or the members of the evaluation team will include people, representatives from Bike and Pet Work Group. And we also have our web submission form almost ready to go. And so beginning 1st of March, we will open up this call for proposal. And at this point in time in McLennan County, only entities that are eligible to apply for this are the municipalities. And so if anyone, any citizen groups that may want a particular project pushed through, they need to get in touch with their respective entity. And so this is what, let's switch to that. We wanted to show you walk you through, but if there is any question or any difficulty with the web submission, or if you have any questions, just let us know, and we're happy to answer that. But the entire system is already set. And tomorrow we will have further discussion. There is in which we'll have a little more clarity about the exact amount of fund that is going to be available under carbon reduction program, because the initial $550,000 that I had mentioned, that was communicated to us from the Federal Highway Administration, but it is very much possible that we may have access to some more funds than that. But we can't confirm that. We will have a discussion on this tomorrow with the TPMP division of TXDot, and we'll have a little more clarity on exactly how much fund do we have. But there's a really exciting project. We can come up with a whole bunch of high impact, low cost projects, which can have, we can start allocating funding to this fairly quickly. And so we're really excited about that.
That's right. As opposed to our traditional high cost program.
That's what we've been doing. So those are all the items we have.
Yeah, and we don't have time to go over this, but I know on that grant that we got, that we received, there's almost every, I think we looked at the report, almost every other MPO applied for the same, but some got more, some got a little bit less for this grant. So good work in getting that put together.
There were 25 or so MPOs across the country that received this grant. And Texas was not only number one, we had 9 of Texas MPOs that applied.
How many MPOs are there?
Roughly about 300.
In Texas, there's
23.
They're pretty good, if I do say so.
great. Any questions on the monthly report? Okay, now we have the announcements here. Item 14. The next MPO policy board meeting is scheduled for Thursday, March 16th, 2023 at 2 p.m. At that point, we'll update and discuss the grant opportunities we're talking about. We'll have the TXDot construction update from Bike again. And we'll talk about the connected and automated vehicles work group at that time. Does anyone have an agenda item they'd like to have considered for a future meeting? Anyone? No, we do not have one. Okay, so at this time, we're going to go to item 15, the hearing of visitors. At this time, we provide an opportunity for the public to address the MPO policy board on any item of MPO business not identified in this agenda. We will open a hearing of visitors at 3:08. Do we have any cards? Any visitors? We will close the public hearing at 3:08, and being no further business, we'll adjourn the meeting at 3:09. What's that, Annette? We've got the schematics back on the back table over there. Sorry. It's all good.